get every single healer to 3K, pugging entirely on my own. I started this journey on November 14th and finished just last week on March 4th. My name's BowserTheHealer, and trust me when I say this is the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do in World of Warcraft. I don't want to waste too much time here, as there's a ton to cover, so if you have a burning question for me, feel free to put it down in the comment section, but my guild helped me put together a list of common questions that I get asked so that I can answer them and hopefully satiate your curiosity for this kind of wild challenge that I've been on. So let's dive into it. If you like healing content, get subscribed, or if you just like listening to me talk about World of Warcraft, hey, I'd really appreciate that. All right, let's start with some of the ground rules. Yes, 3K, every single healer, while not playing with any of my friends. This meant hiding offline 99% of the time, and a few times having to tell someone to leave the key, or I would leave the key because I knew that it was somebody on my friends list. However, that was basically it. I did allow myself to play with a friend if, say, I had completed a key level. So if a 20 Waycrest Manor on Tyrannical was timed already, I didn't mind doing another 20 Tyrannical Waycrest Manor, or even like a 17 or a 15. I did allow myself to do a few rat keys, you know, somewhere in the 12 to 15 range, but while I did those keys with friends before I did higher keys, I only did a couple of them before ultimately I was just playing on my own the whole season. So I want to say like, oh yeah, I got a bunch of score that way. No, I had to clean up a ton of score, looking like Swiss cheese on these characters, like 3 keys timed on a Tyrannical and like 6 on a Fortified, but they're all 10s and 118. Now, a lot of people also ask about the priest situation. Now, I combined them because I was worried about time, and it did take somewhere in the realm of 4 months, obviously, so I've been here for a minute. Upon playing Holy and Disc in a lot of these keys, I decided that Disc was going to be a lot harder and more stressful. So I opted to playing Discipline Priest more often, and then eventually it was almost all of the keys were timed on Disc. I'm now cleaning up some of the Holy keys so that I could provide more of my insights on the spec, and I actually just made a video about Holy Priest, but I went with Discipline because it was harder and it was a difficult part of the challenge, and if I had known that I could have finished on March 4th, I probably would have allowed myself to run back all of the keys on Holy as well, but I'll just do that for fun in sort of the post-challenge era of my channel. This one gets asked all the time, which one was the hardest and which one was the easiest? The hardest by far was Discipline Priest. The throughput on Discipline Priest is just not very good. Now, it's good enough that in a coordinated group it gets the job done, but if people are taking extra damage, not hitting their defensives, yeah, it falls apart. Disc was the hardest. I want to be fully honest with you all, I've never had a stress nightmare in my life playing a video game. I had nightmares about waking up and playing Discipline Priest. It was that bad. I ended up finishing the challenge quickly on Discipline Priest when that started happening because I didn't want there to be any issues. And trust me, I see a therapist. I'm okay. But it really was a little shocking that it was that stressful that I was having issues. I didn't have that in college. I didn't have a single stress nightmare in college. Oh, but playing Discipline Priest, still love Discipline Priest, still enjoy playing it. But yeah, it was that hard. The easiest though was Mistweaver. Now, I did talk about this in the update video, but realistically, Mistweaver was the easiest, not because it was meta. I've kind of stood by Mistweaver being a strong pug healer for a long time now, and I think that it really is. But I think the biggest reason was not just that I played Mistweaver a lot, not just that I'm good at it or it's meta, it was that it was the start of the season. So allow me the small tangent, but the start of the seasons when a lot of people are getting ready for Heroic and Mythic Raid, trying to get their early score, and they're busting their buns. But then as the season moves on, they start raid logging, maybe they're playing other games. We got lives, I get it. But a lot of people who have been slowly getting gear and grinding up end up at the key level that I'm working on. This mid-season 1 month in or so and beyond is the hardest part about pugging, because it doesn't get much easier. Players don't know what they're doing, they don't know how those keys work, and because there was a bit of gear bloat, people got into key levels that they did not belong in, getting carried, and you were just like, how did you get to a 22 and not know how to do this boss's mechanics? Now, I don't want to diminish anyone's achievements. This season is tough, and if you got to 3K, you got Hero, you got Keystone Master for the first time, honestly, be proud of yourself. That probably means you could have done it on other seasons, and I'll stand by that. There are so many players that did incredible work this season. but it also meant that I got more people who felt, air quotes, carried, and trust me, they were a struggle. Which one did I like the most and which one did I like the least? For most, it's Preservation Evoker. That shouldn't be a shocker to anyone who watches my channel. I just love these dragons. I love the creativity and the sort of on your feet play style that Preservation has. Keeps me on my toes, keeps me sharp, and I find that super engaging. It's not for everyone. It's extremely difficult in the pug environment, but I like it a lot. So yeah, it was definitely my favorite. My least favorite, however, was Holy Paladin. Now, I don't want to completely dunk on Holy Paladin. Yes, the rework isn't my favorite. Something about it just isn't clicking, and I think it needs another look at. The values were really strong last season, and now that the values are weaker, it's kind of showing its issues, and that's okay. But when Holy Paladin's in its cooldowns, it actually feels really, really good. And when it wasn't working, was the parts I liked the least about it. But ultimately, I still had fun on Holy Paladin. It was the players. I don't know what it is. I was cursed. When I started a key on Holy Paladin, I feel like I had the highest chance of something going wrong. Players disconnecting, people not knowing how to play the game. The worst tanks I have ever played with. Seriously, I don't know what it is. And the worst part was I was playing my Resto Shaman at the same time, right? So I would have a terrible key on my Paladin, get on my Resto Shaman, cleanest key in the world. It was super smooth. We time it. It's incredible. Get back on the Paladin, 3 failed keys, just back-to-back pugs, ruining Christmas. Get back on Resto Shaman, easiest key of my life. How does this happen? And the other healer that this happened with, my second least favorite to play with this season, was Druid. Druid's one of my favorite healers. It's really grown on me. Puns. But I really loved it. But the people I had to play with this season, my Druid just summoned the most insufferable, toxic players. I did not have this issue on any other healer. I had some very annoying players on Disc, but Disc is really challenging, and I feel like they wouldn't have been complaining if I was, say, on my Mistweaver. However, it was, signed into Druid, signed into Paladin, my life was terrible. But that being said, I actually found large amounts of enjoyments with every single spec that I played. So I don't want it to sound like, oh, one of these specs sucks. No, I think if you like healing, there's something for you in World of Warcraft that you will love. It definitely exists here, and the designs were super cool. In fact, on one more small tangent, but the healers are actually in such a cool place in World of Warcraft. All of them function so differently. It's such a different experience to play each healer. The closest 2 healers are Holy Priest and Resto Shaman, and even they are worlds apart in the way that they do damage, the way that they set things up, and the way that they combo. How did you get invited when you weren't meta? So, interesting part about this, I had almost no issues getting invited as a healer. Maybe that's the healer privilege, probably is, but honestly, I didn't really struggle on any character. There does hit a point at higher key levels where players get unbelievably picky about who they bring, and so when that happens, I end up sitting in training mode in Super Smash Bros. Melee and just practicing my wave dashes and movement and chatting with chat. It wasn't too bad. My recommendation though is to get good score, keep your score even, right? Like try to clean up your roughest keys so that you have a good amount of score, so that you look decorated. And when you get invited, make sure that your gear's enchanted and has all the nice things so that people don't have a reason to want to kick you. And you'll be fine. I had very little issues getting into keys. What classes or specs were problems? So I don't want to sound too finger pointy here. The biggest issue is always flavor of the month. If it was flavor of the month, it was a problem. Season 1 with Paladins and not standing in Consecration, not hitting Shield of the Righteous. Season 2, I got a lot of fire mages that didn't know how to do their rotation and didn't know how to do damage. I had bears that didn't press Iron Fur, and I had augmentation players that were playing lazy and only providing a okay amount of damage, not realizing that they could be doing more. Season 3, not a whole lot changed. If a Vengeance Demon Hunter was good, they were a legend. If they were bad, they exploded. And that's the typical business, right? BM Hunters making mistakes, Havoc Demon Hunters making mistakes, Outlaw Rogues not doing enough damage. The list goes on. If it was flavor of the month, if it became popular and people jumped on it, those were always the toughest to play with because it was such a coin flip, whether they were good or not. Now, that being said, I will call out 2 of them, BM Hunters and Augmentation Evokers. BM Hunters were my go-to hunter other than survival before. I felt like I loved having BMs because they always helped me out. they position well, they use their utility well, they're great. Then they became meta, and yeah, everyone's playing one, which means there goes all the utility, there goes all the good positioning, everything I loved about having BMs in my party, out the window because of flavor of the month. Aug's a different story. I'm still making that Aug M Plus video for all of you who are curious. That video is entirely inspired by trying to get people to be better at Aug, because they're not. Aug players not keeping Ebb and Might up, not understanding what their abilities do, not understanding their mastery, not understanding what Breath of Eons does. The amount of players I have seen Breath of Eons, the end of a pack, and nothing takes damage from Breath of Eons because it died before the Breath of Eons went off. It just makes me so mad. Like, did you not read what the ability does? It does 0 damage until it explodes. So you have to use it at the start of a pull, which so happens to line up with when people are dumping the most amount of damage typically. Aug players were so busted last season. They got so carried. I think the Pug effect is in full force, and when I get a good Aug, it is a blessing. The damage numbers are excellent, the defensive usage is great, and I'm living my best life. But Augs that don't understand that they can provide group-wide defensives, Augs that don't understand that they can give the healer source of magic and give them free damage and free healing, yeah, Aug players. Now, I do need to segue into tank issues. Tanks are problems for me, and I do not know how I get this. Rest in peace, my Holy Paladin. They got the worst of it, but it's every single season I have this complaint. Tanks not worrying about living. Every tank can survive a majority of pulls completely on their own with very little help from a healer. And what blows my mind is the amount of tanks that don't focus and practice on staying alive. I feel like tanks are trying to do more damage at the sacrifice of staying alive rather than optimizing by learning how to get threat and stay alive and then make the damage better as you go on. But it's, yeah, I mean, I got a warrior with a 19% shield block uptime. I lost my mind. Pugs! I can't. Not only did I lose my mind, but you do more damage as a prot warrior with shield block up. What are you doing? Why aren't you pressing Iron Fur? It's free armor. It costs you so little. These things drive me crazy. I started learning prot warrior just so that I could be the tank I always wanted to be. And you'll never guess, I get to keep shield block up. I'm pretty good at it. 10 out of 10. I'm your tank. What affix weeks were the best and the worst? So this is a fun one. Incorporeal and Afflicted are the worst. Not in that it's actually a bad affix. I think they need to just have one Incorporeal and one Afflicted, and maybe at the same time, but just not doubles. The doubles suck, and more importantly, players don't want to help, and that drives me crazy. People not wanting to do affixes hurts, and I wish that more affixes had kiss curse effects to them, like, hey, if you clear an Afflicted, you get a 5% damage amp, because that would encourage players to want to go up and help or do something to make sure that the party lives through the Afflicted affix. Other than those two affixes causing me a deep amount of frustration because of other people, not because of the affix, my goal was to never play on push week, because push weeks were the worst. So when people said like a week was good, oh, it's only entangling and something else, right? It's an easy week. It's a push week. That was the worst time to play. Everyone came out of the woodworks and didn't know how to play the game, queued up, and then got demolished in a key because they forgot how to play the game. I don't know why this happens every time. I don't know what the phenomena is here, but when I play on the weeks that no one wants to play on, I get the most amount of work done. I get so much work done at the start of a season and so much work done with the groups that are willing to put up with fortified bolstering. I'm not making it up. Those were easily some of the best key weeks of season 3 for me. I often get asked this one, why didn't I go for a higher score? This season, I probably could have. However, as I've learned from going higher than 3k on my Preservation Evoker and my Mistweaver, as well as talking to many people, the Pug situation doesn't get a whole lot better until you're closer to title range. And then you end up playing with people that know you and you end up getting in discords, and all of a sudden you're not pugging anymore. So I feel like the score is a nice happy place for really pushing yourself in that near top 1% range, while also being very accessible as a pug experience if you know what you're doing. Not that it's the most accessible, but it's at least, I think, more accessible than 3,500 or 3,600. And that might help explain why don't I go for title. If I get a group that wants me as their healer, maybe as a DPS, maybe as a tank even, but if I get a group that's like, hey, Bowser, we'd love to have you, and our schedules work out, I'll go for title. I would love that. But it's not pugging, which is my favorite part about World of Warcraft. I know that sounds like insane. I think that answers the next question. Why did you do it? There is this point of play where as a healer, you can carry, and you can do so much work to keep a run alive that has no business staying alive, whether that's from a damage perspective, a healing perspective, mitigation, saving lives, or making incredible plays to keep people upright and doing the right thing. I love it. That high is worth every single failed key, because you get those brilliant runs where everything works out, you save your homies, you pump on the meters, and the end result is you get out of the dungeon with loot, score, and everyone's happy. And that is a majority of my experiences. I didn't get a ton of toxic keys. I got keys that failed, but I didn't get a lot of bad ones. I mostly got happy players and people who were excited that they had a good healer and that we made it to the end, a lot of the times complimenting each other on good damage or good tanking, or even me doing good healing, and it made my day. I love it. Now, would I do it again? Oh, probably not, if I'm being completely honest with you. There's a few reasons why I wouldn't do it again, though. The first of which is that I would like to have my free time back. Listen, I'm a full-time YouTuber and streamer. I'm a part-time esports coach and commentator here in Colorado. I haven't been able to play with my friends because I'm pugging everything. I haven't been able to play with my friends because I'm spending so much time researching and working on videos and editing and clipping and running the numbers to make sure I know what I'm doing. Listen, y'all, I'm single and I'm trying to find the man of my dreams, and I wouldn't be able to do that if my life depended on it during this challenge, because I'm so end to end busy. And that's before like doctor's appointments or birthdays or other things that I will just scratch out a date on the calendar and be like, no, I need to take this day off. It's been tough, and I would really like to have my free time back. Maybe I'll do a tank challenge someday. I think that would be fun. It'd be a bit easier, and I think DPS would be even easier. Not to say that pugging on them is completely free. I just think healer is genuinely the hardest way to go about this challenge. But I find the funny part is that I'm popular. I don't mean that in like a conceited way. I get recognized places now. People know who I am when I sign up for keys. But that also kind of makes it a little unfair, don't you think, as a challenge? So I felt like, you know, there's a real chance my channel keeps growing and I'm going to get more popular, which means that I can't really pug as anonymously without making an anonymous character and redoing everything, right? And I don't want to do it off stream. I want to do it on stream. So maybe this is the only time I do it. Maybe I do an adjusted version of the challenge, or I just do a more chill version of the challenge where I worry less about the end of a season and I just try to have fun with it. After all that I've been through, there's only one change I want to make to this game right now. And maybe there's more, but there's one thing I think that would have made pugging so much easier, and I really hope that Blizzard can do this. And I know they watch my videos, so people at Blizzard, I love you. I would love to have some UI improvements on enemy nameplates. I want to know who they're casting on. I use Plater. Plater tells me that information. But how many pugs do we think don't run add-ons, don't run Plater? Not being able to know who's casting on me is straight up something that will kill me in a higher key. I need to know what's going on. And if my teammates don't know that they're about to get targeted by like 3 soul bolts or whatever, like, yeah, they're going to explode. If they can kick one defensive and self-heal through the next one, they could survive something that would be otherwise horrifyingly lethal. And I love that kind of information. I just wish it was a part of the base game. For my final note, the biggest takeaway, and if I miss something, tell me in the comments section. I'll try to get back to you, or I'll make a follow-up video. But I'll have some footage on screen of this. Coordinated play is much easier than pugging. Now, this footage is with some people that I absolutely adore. Some of the best WoW players I've ever played with great comms, great vibes. We call out each other's abilities. We know what we need to use when. We rotate our kicks. They're incredible to play with. This is easier than an 18 Waycrest Manor. Yeah, a 25 Waycrest Manor fortified is easier than an 18 Waycrest Manor fortified with pugs. There are days where those pug groups are impossible. There are days that it's manageable, but you got to play perfect. And I didn't have to play nearly as perfect in this 25. There does hit a key level where you need to play perfect, but it's a different kind of perfect, a coordinated perfect where you know where your tools go and you have the tools to save a disaster and you can make it work. And at that level of play, it's also super impressive. But just don't let anyone tell you pug stars out there, you DPS healers and tanks, don't let anyone tell you that pugging isn't impressive. It's challenging. And some people only play DPS, only play tank or healer, and they don't really get to experience that other side of the game. But I've done it all. And it's hard. And you're a badass if you pug stuff and you make it out most of the time. So keep it up, you legend. But that's going to do it from me. Thank you all so much for watching. More videos to come, of course. I'm so relieved to be done with this challenge. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.